Reflections on the Good News of Jesus Christ for the seventh Sunday of Ordinary Time from the Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "To you who hear, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. To the person who strikes you on one cheek, offer the other one as well. And from the person who takes your cloak, do not withhold even your tunic. Give to everyone who asks of you, and from the one who takes what is yours, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. For if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. If you lend money to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners and get back the same amount. But rather, love your enemies, do good to them, and lend expecting nothing back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for he himself is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Stop judging, and you will not be judged. Stop condemning, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and gifts will be given to you. A good measure, packed together, shaken down, and overflowing, will be poured into your lap. For the measure with which you measure will in return be measured out to you. The good news of the Lord. When Abraham Lincoln began his presidency in 1861, one of his bitterest opponents was Edwin McMasters Stanton. Stanton despised Lincoln. Stanton's antipathy for Lincoln dated back to a court case they were both a part of years before when they were young lawyers. Stanton had called Lincoln the original guerrilla because of his looks and frontier speech. Stanton believed that the, quote, painful imbecility of the Lincoln administration would doom the Union cause, and was convinced that the rebels would take Washington within a month. 1 year into his presidency, Lincoln was forced to replace the Secretary of War. To the shock of his advisers and cabinet, Lincoln named Edwin Stanton to the war post. His inner circle pleaded with the president to reconsider, but Lincoln was firm. "Yes, I know, Mr. Stanton. I know all the terrible things he has said about me, but I believe he is the best man for the job." So Edwin Stanton, a brilliant lawyer and a shrewd strategist, became Lincoln's Secretary of War. Secretary Stanton distinguished himself by his focused and efficient management of the War Department and a more aggressive and effective prosecution of the Union's war effort. 3 years later, with the end of the war in sight, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated on the night of Good Friday in Ford's Theater. Upon hearing the news, Secretary Stanton rushed to the president's side and was with him at his death. Stanton said of the man he had so viciously ridiculed, "There lies the greatest ruler of men the world has ever seen. He now belongs to the ages." Lincoln's recognizing Edwin Stanton's talents transformed a critic's hatred and criticism into trust and admiration. Christ's teachings on loving one's enemies challenges us to break the cycle of hatred, fear, and vengeance that often ensnares us and families and churches and communities. St. Augustine preached that there is no greater invitation to love than loving first. In every relationship, in every set of circumstances, the faithful disciple of Jesus seeks to break the destructive pattern of hatred and distrust by taking that difficult and humbling first step to bridge differences and affirm the good of those we might vehemently disagree with. That perspective made Abraham Lincoln the great leader that he was, and can make us ministers of reconciliation in the spirit of Jesus. Loving one's enemies is not about peace at any price, not a question of projecting a gentle, loving image, but a passion to restore justice, dignity, and right relationships between people. How many wars, how many millions of deaths could have been avoided if we had followed this path? Like Jesus, to do so also means being ready to suffer and perhaps lose much, materially and socially. Active nonviolence involves campaigning, sticking one's neck out and speaking out against injustice. At the same time, it always entails speaking the truth in love and seeking to heal, to save, to make whole, but never to hurt or destroy. What Jesus is offering us today is not an option, but the only way that makes sense, the only way that is truly human. Jesus himself is our model. As he hangs naked, stripped of all dignity, the victim of unspeakable violence, this moment, contrary to all appearances, is the moment of his triumph, the triumph of love over hate, violence, and murder. It is a message our violence-ridden cultures desperately need to hear and to learn. Nonviolence is at the heart of Jesus' teaching. Have you heard of the 6888? It is a story that has gone largely untold. The 6888th Postal Directory Battalion, the only U.S. Women's Army Air Corps unit to serve in the European theater during World War II. Their mission was to fix the broken mail delivery system that held up correspondence from reaching soldiers' families and mail sent by the families to their GI husbands and brothers. The mail snafu was having a catastrophic impact on troop morale. The unit's story is told by writer-director Tyler Perry in the film The 6888. The film begins with the story of Lena Derricotte, a Black 18-year-old woman from Philadelphia whose white Jewish boyfriend is killed in Europe. Lena decides to join the army to fight Hitler, but the white, male-dominated military will not let the Women's Army Corps anywhere near the front. The women's commanding officer, Major Charity Adams, is determined to show the Army that Black women have what it takes to serve, despite the systemic and virulent racism that confronts them. After a rough basic training, a determined Lena becomes a WAC. When President Roosevelt personally orders the military mail system be fixed, the incompetent and racist General Halt turns it over to Major Adams and her unit. He gives them 6 months to clean up the backlog of 17 million pieces of undelivered mail. He's convinced they'll fail, putting an end once and for all to this foolishness about women, and Black women in particular, serving in war zones. The women of the 688 go to Scotland and then to England to take on the hopeless mess. They are given no respect or support. They're assigned to a dilapidated, rat-infested building with no heat or resources. It's also expected that they will entertain Black soldiers on weekends. Major Adams is disrespected in public by a lower-ranking male officer, and although she insists that he'll be court-martialed, he never faces charges. Instead, a chaplain assigned to the 688 publicly condemns Major Adams during a Sunday service. But the women manage to get the job done. In not 6 months, but 90 days, they sort and deliver the warehouses of mail that has gone undelivered. Despite the insults and ridicule of the male military establishment, Major Adams and her regiment set up a sophisticated working postal system that effectively gets the mail to and from fast-moving frontline troops. A heartbreaking moment in the film comes when Lena finds a letter addressed to her, a blood-stained letter written by her boyfriend just before his plane crashed. She had never received it. Lena understands better than most the importance of what she and her unit are doing, work that these courageous and generous women performed despite the humiliation they must endure because of their race and gender. The women of the 688 model Jesus's most radical and difficult teachings. When someone wrongs us, Jesus says to forgive them. When given the opportunity to win at another's expense, Jesus asks us to be compassionate. When someone does something we consider evil and sinful, Jesus insists that we neither judge nor condemn them, but love them just the same. When we do something good for someone, Jesus warns us to expect nothing in return. Major Adams and her unit put aside the cruel racism they experience for the greater good of building a working communications link between American servicemen and their anxious families back home. To be a disciple of Jesus means having the courage and generosity of spirit to break the cycle of fear, hatred, and vengeance that ensnares us and ensnares society in division and dysfunction. Once again, we who strive to be faithful disciples of Jesus seek to break that destructive pattern of hatred and distrust by taking that formidable first step to love, to trust, to heal, to be reconciled with those from whom we are separated. Thanks for listening. And if you have found this worthwhile, please pass it on. You may receive these free weekly reflections by subscribing at www.justanother.disciple.com. That's www.justanother.disciple.com. Thanks again.